No, you can record it. Just
Yes, recording. Okay. You know, like when you go to the dentist and they say this won't hurt a bit. This won't hurt a bit. How you doing, man? Good to see you. Thanks for coming in. Yeah.
Already.
I
cut the grass, did 2 loads of clothes.
That'll do it, man, especially in this heat, you know.
Painted 12 mini paintings for this order I had to get out by tomorrow.
Wow, you're doing commission
Packed all
work.
my shit up, drove all the way down here, loaded it up there myself.
Wow.
So.
You're working hard, man. You're working really hard.
Well, if you want to be a musician, that's what you got to do.
I guess that's what it is. It's funny, I wanted to be a musician to get out of working. I obviously had no clue what I was doing, you know.
Yeah.
I did what I was getting into. Well, I think we're ready to get started, man. Okay, my guest has spent over 7 years composing, performing, and recording the blues as a member of many bands, including, and stop me if I'm wrong here, including Mojo Mark IV, Sawbuck, Initial Shock, The Chosen Few, and most recently with Triple Vision. In addition to that, you've also played with the likes of Grateful Dead, Jefferson Airplane, Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, Jim Morrison, Muddy Waters, Santana, Steve Miller, Chuck Berry, and countless others. It's my pleasure to have Mojo Collins here. Did I leave anyone out?
Me.
Okay.
Hoping for me a lot of times.
Oh, yeah, I know how that goes. So I read in one of your previous interviews, you say you got your first lessons from your grandmother playing an old guitar.
Yeah, when I was 3 years old, she had a Stella tenor guitar, and
what is a Stella?
She used to let me comb her hair. It was 5 feet long, and she was 5 feet tall, so it was all the way to the floor every time, and it was really cool. And in return for combing her hair, she taught me how to play a few chords.
Nice. And as well as your grandmother played, and your father, Wild Bill, was...
all my aunts, uncles, and cousins all played. It was a musical family.
So what would you say, what did you gain from your inherited knowledge? Do you feel it was passed down to you?
Well, my dad told my oldest sister, who wanted to be a musician, she was a really fine cellist, and he told her not to get in music because it sucked. Kind of told me the same thing, but I was persistent to want to learn and emulate my dad.
Yeah.
He was one of the greatest guitarists to ever come out of North Carolina, and he helped pioneer country, rock, folk, blues, jazz in the Triangle area for 40 years before. From the 20s right on up to the 60s and 70s. He died when he was in 81. He played with all the biggies, Chet Atkins, Merle Travis, Roy Clark, Grandpa Jones, Manny Pearl. Anytime the Grand Ole Opry would come on tour, they'd always call him to back him up. He was really good and a great inspiration. I called him Wild Bill.
Yeah. What was it like playing music with your father?
I rarely ever saw my father. He worked 3 jobs. He was a truck driver and a shoe repairman and a musician, so he was always going out the door.
Right. I guess you know something about that.
Yeah, I learned that from him.
Yeah, I understand. So would you say that music is in your blood?
My life is nothing but music, and I live the beat of the rhythm, and I drive the road.
Yeah. I hear that. I've read that your dad was involved in doing some local television, WTVD.
In Durham, yeah.
And that you had your first television appearance at, 8 years old?
No, I was actually 11 years old.
11?
I was teaching guitar to my friends in school, and they all saw my dad on TV every Saturday night, so I was kind of like, hey, we need to take lessons from Mojo. But I wouldn't call Mojo then, I would just call Bill. You know, the reason I was named Bill is because my daddy owed so much he named me Bill. I always say that at the post office when I go to pick up my bills. You know, he gets a chuckle every time. But it's the truth. I went to 7 schools one year. Every time the rent came due, we'd have to move.
Yeah.
5 kids with a couple of hangers on, mom and dad. It was a tough go, man. But we got through it.
It definitely makes you tougher later in life, you know. Is what
you learn
I think
early
about it,
on when they pass the
Yeah.
biscuit, you always
Yeah.
take 3 or 4 because they're not coming around again.
And so what was it like when you saw your dad on television? Did you just think this is normal? Everyone's dad is on TV?
No, I was real proud of him.
Yeah.
And he was just such a fine musician and person that everybody loved him.
Yeah.
So he was my inspiration mostly before I discovered Muddy Waters.
Huh. That's great. And how would you describe like the early days of television? You know, you were in these studios. They had these enormous cameras. They had, you know, what was that experience like for you? Being under the hot lights.
I was a little nervous the first time. I sweated a lot. But they had a nice looking lady that came up and dabbed my forehead and dried off the sweat, put a little powder on me. Son, you're a little pale.
And this was live television, I assume, right?
Well, she did that before I went on.
But you went on the air live, right?
Yeah. It was called Saturday Night Country Style.
Wow.
And it was Jim Thornton's Saturday Night Country Style. Jim Thornton and Homer Bryhopper were 2 rivals in the triangle. And both of them played country and western music. They both had country western clubs, and they both had TV shows. One was in Durham, and the other one was in Raleigh, WRAL TV. So my dad would play in between the 2.
Yeah.
Played with both of them for years and years. The show at RAL was called Daybreak. They went on at 5 o'clock in the morning. A lot of times he never even slept that night from driving somewhere. But, you know, he loved to play.
Yeah.
Saw the sacrifice that you have to make if you really want to be a musician.
Yeah, there's no question about that.
It's one thing to
yeah.
strum a guitar, but it's another
Yeah.
thing to get out there and make a living at it.
No question about that. You know, that's what separates the boys from the men.
Well, you love it. You gotta love it. It just comes with the territory.
And your father was a great musician, but he was also a great showman. How much about performing and about show business did you learn from him?
Well, this is a long time before Stevie Ray was ever thought of, but my dad played it behind his back, behind his neck.
Wow.
He learned it from T-Bone Walker, he told me,
Mhm.
who was a great black blues player, showman, extraordinaire. Did all the stuff that Chuck Berry ripped off from it.
Yeah.
You know, and my dad, learned those tricks too. He was able to do all that. And, you know, I have at one time been able to do something like that, but I'm not that much of a showman anymore.
Oh, I disagree. I think that you're really quite a showman, and I really respect the fact that you are equal parts musician and entertainer. And I just wanted to pay you that compliment.
Thank you.
But the follow-up question though that I have with that is, how much do you consider yourself to be a musician or an entertainer? You know, how would you split that divide?
One is 50 and the other is 50, I guess. You just kind of split it down the middle and go with whichever one is rolling.
Yeah.
And if you get too far over on that one, you probably need to lean the other way and
Right.
straighten up and get back on the other one so you're leveled out. A lot of people I knew in the music business used to lean the wrong way to the drugs and the attitude, and I'm bigger than you are and that kind of thing. And I got to witness all that, and I learned a lot from that. And the fact that I'm still here shows me that, I'm a strong person, and I just want to praise God for giving me the talent and blessing me with such a great life.
Yeah. And blessing you with the drive as well.
Yeah,
To-
I
to
do
work
have
so
a drive.
hard.
It's still
Yeah.
there.
That's
I
a
lost
talent
it
as
about
well.
a year ago with the heart thing, but it's taken about 15 months. I'm back though.
And how are you feeling in general?
I feel good, man.
Mhm.
I need a cigar and a glass of wine. I know you got one for me.
After the show.
Oh, come on. If Willie was here.
Well, I'm glad to see that you're doing well, and I think that you sound as good as you ever did. I mean,
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
I still love to play, and that's
think
what
that-
comes out. Those guys I play with, the Jolly Boys, Chris and Bill, they've been with me now almost 8 years, 8 seasons. So it's like, it's got that Stevie Ray Vaughan tightness to it, you know, just a trio and you go at it.
yeah, the two guys you play with, Bill and Chris, I met them, delightful guys,
Yeah,
brothers. So they've been playing together a long time.
40 years.
Yeah, they have.
And I found them both in the church.
Wow.
I couldn't find any musicians that weren't messed up on something.
Mhm.
So I played solo for so long when I first moved here in 73. I've been down here a long time now, 46 years.
Yeah.
You know, when I turned 70 years old, I sat down and counted up how many days it was, and it was 25,540 days. And I said, well, that 70 doesn't sound too old compared to 25,540. My wife said, I'm a little off to the right or something.
It's all how you look at things. How would you describe the difference between when you play by yourself and you accompany yourself and you play in a band? What's the major difference for you?
It's a lot more work solo for me now. I'm older. I can't stomp the box like I used to. But I like playing with the band better because they give me something to float over.
Sure.
And it's a lot easier for me to play an electric guitar than it
Yeah.
is an acoustic all night. And I have paid some dues on some guitars. I ain't kidding you.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with you 100%. As somebody that plays in a band and also plays on their own, it's a lot easier when you got
Yeah, a lot of
supporting
times I
cast,
get to combine the two
Yeah.
on concerts. And
Well, you open for yourself, as you said.
and we got this little thing going where I didn't do it at Turner's, but I do it on it if we're doing an outside show where I'll play by myself for a while, then I'll say, hey, I picked up this guy hitchhiking, and you come on and play some bass guitar with me. And then he'll come up and play a couple, and I said, there was a guy playing drums right over here. Can he come up? And then we kind of get the whole thing rolling. People seem to like it, you know, they kind of chuckle.
Yeah.
I think they know, but
Right.
they're pretending like they don't. But anyway, just something that came off the cuff.
So you didn't always just play guitar. You started out playing some different instruments and some different styles, right?
I started out playing spoons
Wow.
and spoons. Then it was tambourine. Then it was back porch singing with them when they jam on Sundays. And then I picked up the guitar. And my dad also showed me some boogie-woogie piano. I'm also a pianist.
Yeah.
Not a great one, but I've written a couple of dozen songs on the piano that sound completely different than the guitar work, you know. I like diversification in my sound. So when you're listening to me, you're really listening to 100, 200, 300, maybe 1,000 different musicians that I've been around and played with or learned from. A little bit from each one.
And what do you think it is about the guitar that made you choose that instrument?
Mostly because my dad had that 54 Stratocaster. It's worth about 100,000 now.
Do you know where that Stratocaster is
Yeah,
today?
it's in a collector in Reno, Nevada.
So
It
you
got
can go visit.
stolen.
I'm sorry.
31 years ago. Well, it got stolen the day he died, September 20th, 1981. And it wound up in Reno. It took me 31 years to find it. A collector has it. He only has 67,000 on it.
You can't file a claim?
He said if I had the serial number, it was mine, but I didn't have it. I didn't have it recorded. Anyway, it's there. I found it. You know, still had the tobacco burns up here where he'd put his cigars and cigarettes. And I play a Strat to this day because he did. He started out with a 54 gold top Les Paul because him and Les Paul were friends. And he got one of the very first gold tops, number 4, I think.
Wow.
He said it was too heavy on his gigs, and he went and traded it for that Strat, 54 Strat, and it was 6 or 8 pounds lighter than the Les Paul, which helped him immensely because he played a lot and traveled a lot.
Your first band came out of your stint in the Air Force. That seems kind of a roundabout way to go things. How did that come about?
I was stationed in Glasgow, Montana in 1962, and when I first went there, I was an air policeman, Spitshine, pistol, nightclub, standing at the front gate with the white gloves, directing traffic with a whistle. And it got old quick, so I cross-trained into food service, became a chef, and I used to cook for all the colonels and generals when they come in. It was a SAC base, Strategic Air Command, and I'd always cook for them. They come in sometimes at 3 o'clock in the morning on a flight and say, I'm hungry, and they'd get me up and I'd go cook for them. But they all loved me, man, because I give them big old T-bones and mashed potatoes and gravy, and I could cook back in the old days. I used to cook for 9,000 people 3 times a day. And I did that tour for 2.5 years, and it was 55 below zero both winters. And a couple of my friends actually froze to death, lost in a snowdrift during my tenure there at Glasgow Air Force Base. So when I got out, they wanted me to re-up and go to the Philippines. This was before Vietnam. And I didn't. I decided not to, and just went out, got me a bottle, and found me a woman and holed up in a hotel room up in Glasgow for a couple of weeks to try to get rid of that funk. I enjoyed serving my country, man, and I did it, and I'm a veteran, and I'm proud of it. I do a lot of benefit work for veterans. They deserve every bit they can get, man. And I'm one of them.
Yeah.
Thank me for my service.
Thank you for your service, man. Both of my uncles were chefs in the Navy too, so like I hear stories about they were.
Everybody's got their little.
Well, just know how popular you know when you're the guy with the food. You know, there's a lot.
Yeah,
of
and I could play the guitar too, and that really got it.
And so the Mojo Mark IV, this is where you took your name from? This is...
No, I met Muddy Waters in the bus station in Chicago on the way to my assignment in Glasgow. I rode a bus. Eastern Airlines was on strike, so I had to take a bus to my assignment, 2,500 miles.
And
when I got there, I said, I ain't ever riding a bus again.
Good choice.
But there was a big snowstorm, and I got stuck there, and McKinley Morganfield was sitting there, man. And I got to meet him and jam with him, and he told me I had a lot of soul for a white boy. So when I got to the base, I bought his record. I was all jacked up and learned some of his songs and put a little band together, and we played in town at some little dive, mostly for the locals who hated military because they'd run off with all their women.
Yeah.
So there were a few brawls during that tenure there for a couple of years. One of them I got smashed with a garbage can lid, a metal one, knocked me out, woke up and somewhere else in the brig. Anyway, So I started Mojo's Mark IV. There were 4 black fellows in my squadron, the cook food service squadron, that showed interest in playing with me. A drummer, a keyboard player, and a bass player, and a singer. So I was the only white guy in the band. I'm singing Muddy Waters. They're backing me up.
Yeah.
You know, it was kind of ironic. And so I got the nickname Mojo from doing Mojo work and then just getting turned on to the blues, you know, the real blues. Because all the music I listened to coming up was mostly country and Elvis and rock, that kind of rockabilly, you know. It wasn't, I didn't really see where the root came from until my daddy showed me the boogie woogie piano. Boom, 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 boom. That's the blues, the basic. And in the blues, I tell everybody that plays with me, less is more.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that is the magic of it, is the sparsity of it. I think that's why people
like
are drawn to it.
Muddy could get more out of one note on that slide than a lot of guitar players do in a whole song. The blues is sung by a lot of different people in a lot of different ways, and all of them aren't musicians.
Mm-hmm.
Every day somebody's crying the blues, man, sitting in an office somewhere. And it's just a way of getting a bad feeling out of you, to cry the blues, you know. And you really do have to live the blues to play the blues. It's never been from here up. It's always been from the whole being in me. I learned that from my grandmama. Son, you got to put everything you got into it. So, and also Janis Joplin told me every time you do it, man, do it like it's the last time you'll ever do it, because you don't know when you're going home. So I learned that from Janis.
You had a friendship with Janis Joplin. What was she like when she was not
She
on
was a
stage?
female version of the Mojo. With boobs. Wide open. I loved her, man.
Yeah.
She loved to get drunk and hang out with people. Ain't nothing wrong with that. And sing the blues. You know, the story about that whole thing, Chet Helms had this thing, who was had the Family Dog. And Family Dog in San Francisco was the rival club to the Fillmore, which was Bill Graham's thing. So Bill would never book Janis at the Fillmore because she was in the house band at the Avalon with Big Brother. I used to open for her at the Avalon in 67, 68, before I got to play at the Fillmore.
Mm-hmm.
He was real picky about who he had play there. But we were on tour. We had to tour out of San Francisco because there were so many bands and all of them would play for nothing. Money was not to be found in San Francisco unless you were Steve Miller or one of the headliners, you know. So it was all we had to tour. So we were touring with a band called the Count Five. They had a hit song called Psychotic Reaction.
Mm-hmm.
And on the East Coast, and we got a call from Janis. She said, Bill's going to finally book me at the Fillmore, and I want your band to open up for me. So we drove all the way from New York
And
to
which
the
band was
Fillmore.
that?
That was the Initial Shock.
That was Initial Shock,
We-
okay.
We were a 4-piece unit from Missoula, Montana. And we had the largest sound system of any band there, even the Dead. Their PA sucked. They hire us, pay us $50 to open up for them and use our PA. That was how I got to open a lot of shows, because we had toured the Northwest for 2 or 3 years. But anyway, I got to open for Janis at the Fillmore. That was one of the highlights of my life, man.
Hmm.
But she did offer that night for me to get shot up and stuff, and I didn't want to. I just have a fear of needles, and I think to this day that's one reason I'm still here, because a lot of them are.
Yeah. Yeah, very sad.
And it was, it's always been if I did a drug, I would always try to control the drug and never let it control me.
Mm-hmm.
So.
And how did you find your way out to Haight, Ashbury?
Well, we were opening a show for Paul Revere and the Raiders in Missoula, Montana. And it went real well. And then we did one the next night with the Kingsmen, who did Louie Louie. And they told us, hey, man, something's happening down in Berkeley and Haight, Ashbury, San Francisco. You guys ought to check it out. So we sent both our roadies down there for a weekend. And they came back in 2 weeks, man. They had everything you could think of. And I'd never done anything but drank a beer, and I thought that was cool. So we said, well, we're going to have to move on down there and check it out. And that's how we got there.
What did you think of this whole exodus? You know, just what was your take on it?
I loved it because The Chosen Few is the band that opened up for the Kingsmen and the Wailers and Paul Revere and the Raiders. We were a 6-piece show band that all wore outfits, leather outfits with knee boots. And, you know, we had a Paul Revere and the Raiders outfit too, you know. So when we moved down there, we were able to leave all that stuff behind and just play barefoot with jeans and T-shirts. I love that. Not having to dress up anymore.
I kind of thought you enjoyed dressing up.
Well, I still do like to look. My dad always said, son, if you can't sound worth a boot, you can always look good.
And so just to get back to Haight, Ashbury, what do you think that all of those people, you know, that congregated there, you know, what were they looking for, and did they find it?
I would have to say some place to crash, because there were a lot of people on the street with nowhere to go. I had 11 dates one time in one day. 11 women stopped by. Lord have mercy. It was the free love, the free spirit, you know, just not really caring and saying, hey, the heck with you, I want to do it like this, man. You know, I really liked that movement. But then it turned sour after a few years, and there were a lot of riots. And I moved out of Haight over to Marin County, stayed out there, Sausalito, Stinson Beach. But I loved the Haight.
Yeah.
It was such a great experience living right around the corner from the Grateful Dead on Masonic Street. They lived on Ashbury. I wasn't any further than here to the Poe House, to their house. I used to hang out over there all the time. But you know, they were a great band, but they were called the Warlocks when I met them, 66, early 67. And there's a few places that they played. They played a lot of biker gigs. You know, they were kind of known as the rowdy biker band. And that's kind of how they got started. But they were backed in part by Stanley Owsley, or Owsley Stanley, who had the formula for LSD 25, developed it for the Army, and brought it out on the street. Made millions with it and back to Grateful Dead. That's how they got it. I remember when they first got their record deal and went to L.A., they sent a note back. Everybody was checking on them and stuff. Man, they must have been in there 9 months. And they spent $400,000 on their first album, man, recording time.
Wow.
The Dead. Because none of them really could sing. Jerry could play the... Yeah. Phil Lesh was a good, you know, but they weren't really known as singers. And that's what was the hardest part for them, working out their vocals. But I opened for the Dead a few times. As a matter of fact, Initial Shock is on the Fillmore poster. That's the most sought after one in the Collector's Series. I'm really proud of that.
Cool. And did you get to talk with Jerry much? Did you guys talk
Yeah,
guitar?
I did a lot of drugs with Jerry. Everybody would sit around the big hookah in his living room. And they'd sprinkle PCP on the weed. And that would send you out there. Yeah, I talked with Jerry a few times. He was kind of a loner, I have to say, because he was Jerry Garcia. He'd let people in his living room, but he'd usually go in another room. Same thing when a lot of the other people that I met, Carlos, Chuck Berry, they were all loners, man. They didn't really want to talk to you. They were getting ready for their show. But I met so many people at the Fillmore. I must have opened 20 or 30 shows over a period of 6 years there. And a lot of them were outside. I played once in the polo fields in Golden Gate Park, and it was 38,000 people. There was so many people. It was like the music would reach them in waves. You could see them were reacting to it for as far as you could see, man. That was mind-boggling. Yeah, I opened for the Dead that day in Janis. Yeah, I had fun, man. I wasn't a great musician or a great singer, but I was good enough to get by.
It's hard to believe that there was ever a time that you weren't great, but I'll go along with that.
I mean, when you stand next to Carlos Santana and you think you're a guitar player, you go, well, it's about time to go back to woodshedding a little bit.
Well, I was going to ask you, what did you think of Jerry's chops?
I love Jerry. He played the fluid two-note stuff like my dad played. And that's kind of where my dad had taught me that style, but Jerry played it. And like I said, if you listen to me, you hear a little bit of everybody in me, man. Real fluid player, smooth. I did a show at Norfolk, Virginia Beach Friday for the Life Rolls Home benefit, and I had a guy come up after I finished, and he said, man, you're smooth. You're a smooth guitar player. He didn't say, you're great, you're wonderful. You're smooth. Thought that was pretty cool.
Carefully chosen words.
Yeah.
You got a gig, I guess you were backing up Chuck Berry for one of his...
Initial Shock backed up Chuck Berry 4 nights at the Fillmore because Steve Miller was on tour.
Okay.
Steve always backed Chuck up when he came to town.
I'm a big Chuck Berry fan, so
yeah.
Give me the goods.
Well, Chuck was one of them guys that had the 50-50, but he was leaning more towards big head and white boy, get out of my way kind of. He was sort of a racist in his own way against whites, whereas a lot of whites hated blacks still, stuff. So he was my idol.
Yeah.
I played every lick he ever played on the guitar, and I enjoyed the 4 nights that I did play with him, but there was one night when he looked at me like, take a break, go for it. So I was just burning it up on Johnny Be Good or something. And he came over and grabbed the guitar and stopped me right and grabbed the mic, and he goes, hey, this is my show, white boy. Push me off. That's a truth statement. That was at the Fillmore, and I felt so ashamed. I stood over in the shadows and just played rhythm behind him for the rest of the night. He, quite a showman, man.
He was a little salty, but...
quite a show.
Yeah, but quite a performer.
I hated that he had to sing My Ding-a-Ling before he got a stand-up ovation.
Maybe that's why he was a little salty.
Maybe. Never looked at it like that.
Now, I went to see you a couple of weeks back, and a lot of the music you play is undeniably the blues, but I also hear Elvis, and I hear Chuck Berry, and I hear what I would describe as just classic, real driving rock and roll. So how do you compare the difference between, or what's the relationship, I guess, between, classic rock and roll and the Muddy Waters blues, the electric blues,
Well, when Bob Dylan first went electric at the Newport Jazz Festival, I think it was, he got booed. It was most rockabilly artists like Elvis all played acoustic. there wasn't really a lot of electric stuff going on. Even Johnny Cash had a twanger, you know, and Scotty Moore with Elvis. But, well, rock and roll was born out of the blues. Rock and blues, you know, Buddy Guy was one of the first ones. So learned from Muddy. And I try to carry the root, because I do a trio, as much as I can, and then play the lead over the top of it, which is kind of sort of what a lot of guitar players did. Now Chuck, he would just rock it out on the top and play the rhythm on the when he sang, and I learned that from him, also from my dad. But the blues kind of, like Muddy said, the blues had a baby and they called it rock and roll, you know. And I can't forget that the British invasion had a big influence in my life too, because we used to do a Beatles set, a Stones set. We did a lot of English music, Yardbirds. Matter of fact, I got to ride through Nashville once in a Yardbirds parade. They were going to play somewhere, and we were coming through town headed to play with that band I was telling you about, the Psychotic Reaction, Count Five. And somehow we got in the line of the parade. And we're right, it was the Dick Clark Caravan. We rode right through, just like we were somebody waving in our Cadillac, in our old Plymouth. Now, we went in style, man. We had a 58 Cadillac limousine and a 47 Plymouth limousine. Both of them painted silver with gold sparkle pinstriping. Yeah, they were first-class vehicles. They were gutted from the front seat back so we could put our equipment in each one, and two guys would ride in each vehicle. I remember driving them things from Seattle once to Wrightsville Beach and played 97 days in a row. A place called Lumina Pavilion in Wrightsville Beach. It was a summer gig. Years later, when I moved to Wilmington, there was a little gal came up to me and said, "Look at this." She had a scrapbook and she opened it up, and there was a picture of me giving her a nickel to call me when she grew up. And that's how much telephone calls were back then. Yeah, that's a weird one.
You mentioned the British invasion and all that was going on. A lot of musicians that I've talked to that lived through that have told me, I can't tell you how many times I've heard this, that I saw the Beatles on Ed Sullivan and I became a rock and roller. Why do you think you decided to stick with the blues, for lack of a better term?
Well, the Beatles needed really to learn the root. That's why they stole it from me. I taught them something. No, I never met the Beatles. I really appreciate their work, and I think they're probably the greatest band ever, all around. And I respect them immensely. I'm a big Beatles and Stone fan. The Stones are out again, still touring, and they're all my age and older, man. It just gives me so much inspiration to keep going. I just hope I die on stage getting it home. I'm had a good life and I'm kind of ready to go. British invasion, I think the Who were probably one of the best rhythm rock bands going live. I saw them all. I saw everyone that came, man. They all played the Fillmore, and I worked for the Fillmore. I got in the back door. I got to see probably 300 or 400 shows over a period of 6 years, all free. But I saw Jimi Hendrix 4 nights in a row. It was only $3 to see him.
Wow.
He was getting $300 a night.
Yeah, unbelievable.
I was backstage when Bill brought his check and stuff and paid him. $1,200, 4 big nights. Hey, you rich, man. Jimmy wasn't too happy about that. He packed it every night, man.
I read somewhere that the Supremes played a week of shows at the Uptown Theater in Philadelphia for $300. 8 shows. One of the days was 2 shows.
It was never about the money.
I guess not.
It's still not
right.
that way.
Right.
Yeah, there are a very select few that could make it through to the other side. A lot of those people have problems. So I knew a lot of rich people. Some of them are dead now because they just couldn't handle it. If I'd have been rich, I'd have probably been dead.
Yeah. I think there's something to that. I really do.
If I was rich now, though, I've been transformed. I would help as many people as I could that needed it.
That's what I would like to do, too.
And I do that by doing benefits, which are my favorite gigs now that I'm a little older.
Yeah.
I was 23 during the Summer of Love.
Yeah.
67.
You were just the right age.
Wow. I'm telling you, man. It was literally a trip. Yeah. It never stopped. It was 24 hours a day, man. Sprinkle a little this on your cereal, and sprinkle a little that on in your Coke. I am so fortunate that I'm still around.
Yeah.
But God has me here for a reason, and a lot of people say that I blessed them with my talents, and I hope I do. I hope I am able to reach people and let them feel the music, not just listen to the music. Because the blues is about the feeling, it's not just the hearing.
Mm-hmm. And do you feel like you come from the Carolina blues tradition, or have you followed more in the Delta blues, Muddy Waters?
Well, the Carolina blues to me was a thing called beach music. And I never could get in a beach music band. Mm-hmm. I just didn't like that kind of music, and I couldn't play it. So when I left to go in the Air Force, I took my, I had a Silvertone F-hole single cutaway guitar through an old Silvertone amp. I think it might have cost $100 for both of them. Mm-hmm. That's what I put my first band together with. But I think that because I left North Carolina and had all these other varied influences, now I can play beach music now. It don't bother me. I'll jam in any beach music band. David Hicks from the Band of Oz, I used to change his diapers. I did. I grew up right next to him. And I used to babysit him and his brothers.
And what went into your decision to make your home here on the Outer Banks and play music here, as opposed to, say, going to Nashville or Chicago or someplace like that with more of a active
Well, when I came back from California in 72, I met my wife, who was in a divorce thing with her husband, and she had a 5-year-old son, Scooter. And I started hanging out with her. I would have probably gone back to California if it wasn't for her. And she got offered a job in Nags Head, real nice job at the Galleon Esplanade, dressing windows, doing advertising and merchandising. And so we came down for a weekend, and that was 46 years ago, man. I never left. I tell people, man, I used to have this 47 Plymouth that burned more oil than it did gas, and we'd go riding down the road, me and her and Scooter, and he'd be up on that round thing in the middle, and the floorboard was all rotted out. The doors were roped shut. But that was, tomorrow I'm playing the 44th or the 45th anniversary of Jockey's Ridge for Carolys's birthday. I wrote that song in 74 to save Jockey's Ridge, and got me into 4th grade history books. They've called me every year for 44 years to play that for them.
Yes, you've been known for your work in the community. In fact, you are a recipient of the Order of Longleaf Pine Society's most prestigious award. Congratulations on that.
Thank you. That was a humbling shock. It was presented to me by my pastor at my church, through the church, and some of the elders in the church felt that I should be recognized for some of my efforts that I had done with the Lighthouse and Jockey's Ridge and Chickamaucomico and a few other things, benefit work. And they wrote a letter to the governor, and next thing I know, I got this award hanging on my wall, and I'm so humbled by it. I just really don't feel like I deserved it, but there it is.
It's nice to be recognized.
It was 40 years ago I wrote the song, man.
And what other causes are you involved with now, or are you thinking about getting involved with?
I'm just trying to do the Mojo calls right now. This past year has been unsettling financially, to say the least, and it's been a struggle, but we're coming out of it, and I can see the light down the road.
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that. What other music projects do you have? Do you have another CD in the works?
I am working on material for a new CD. I'm thinking it's going to be just me and the guitar.
Mm-hmm.
Gut bucket style, kick in the box, back to the root.
How are you doing with your songwriting right now? Do you feel like this?
I'm not a forced writer, and I wait for the inspiration to hit me. So after a couple glasses of wine and a few cigars, it hits me, you know.
And what advice would you offer to a younger person that's just starting out in music or is just thinking about?
Don't drink or smoke. I'm sorry. Go buy yourself a guitar and get into it.
Yeah.
I think we need a few more guitar players out there. You know, music is the rhythm of life.
Yeah.
You know, everything I see and feel is a note from some song somewhere.
Yeah.
You know, and I still am fluent in my writing, and I've just written a couple instrumentals I think are really cool.
So given all the people that you've opened for and that you've worked with, let's say you're in your car and on the radio a Grateful Dead song comes on or a Janis Joplin song comes on. What feelings or what memories, come up for you?
Well, I usually just shake my head and turn it off. No, I'll be truthful with you. I don't listen to anybody else's music. I never have. I don't want to be influenced anymore. I want to do what I do and what I've gathered up. Now it's time to put the flowers in the vase and let them shine a little bit. Let me shine.
So if you're on a long road trip going somewhere, you're saying there's no music in the car at all? You're listening to news radio?
If I listen to anything, it's my music. I try to hone my own songs and sing harmonies to them, and there are other parts in there. You can actually hear one little phrase in a song and it'll stick in your head. Next thing you know, you've written another whole song from just that one little riff. You know?
I wish I could do that. I hate listening to my own music, so it's like the last thing I want to listen to.
Well, I have to force myself because I'm not that great a singer.
You do have to force yourself. Because, it's like, I cringe listening to my own music. I just go, oh my God.
Oh, well, I don't think...
Maybe I'm not as good as you, is what it is.
Well,
I'll get there.
It's not a matter of good, man. It's just a matter of enjoying what you do and having a good time doing it. And never do it for the money. Always do it for yourself. Always play for yourself, not for the people. If you please yourself, you're going to please the people.
Is that what you do?
Yes. You notice I close my eyes when I play a lot? Yeah. I go to the Mozone.
Yeah.
It's the Mozone.
Well, I think that you've had a brilliant career. I think anyone that gets to play as long as you do, and not only play, but play what you want to play. You're playing your music,
Yeah.
I think you've been, wildly successful.
Well, it's been a great ride, and like I said, I'll reiterate, it's not about the money. It never has been. And I saw how hard my dad worked, and we barely made it. We struggled. We lost our house to this or that, and had to move and stuff. And he still carried on with it. and it gave me so much inspiration. And my grandmother Lorraine instilled into me, you know, give it all you got, son.
How much do you feel that, you know, when you're performing, do you feel like you're carrying your father's legacy?
To a certain degree and point. I have people mention it to me, people that have played with him in the past that still living. I heard one of your songs, man, it sounded like your dad.
Yeah.
You know, like, you know, I could never be as good as he was. He was just phenomenally talented. And piano and guitar. He sang too, but he just liked to have a good time. I went to one of my first gigs I went to when I was 5 years old was at a barn dance in Clayton, North Carolina, with the Homer Barhopper and the Dixie Dudes. And there was an electric instrument in the band. It was a dobro, upright bass, banjo, fiddle, and acoustic guitar. And the drummer did have a snare that he played with brushes. So, but it was all acoustic. They had a great time for 3 or 4 hours. Everybody was dancing. The guy came up and gave him a big fistful of money, and I looked at him. I said, "Man, that's what I want to do. Have a good time and get paid doing it." So, you know,
it's pretty much my story too.
Yeah.
You get paid to play music. I'm game
wow,
for that.
Man. Yeah. There have been shows in the past where I was paid very handsomely, and I felt like in some instances, like I didn't really deserve it. But
you mentioned that when you met Muddy Waters, approximately what year was that?
62.
Okay, so he was enjoying his comeback.
Oh yeah.
At that point, but he had been quite down and out in the years before that.
Yes, well, he was born down in Louisiana, I think, and I went to Louisiana during the 80s to experience. I went to his house and sat on his porch and felt the vibe of the Muddy, you know, where he was born and stuff. And he was still playing. I did a show with him in Norfolk, Virginia at Rogues Gallery, one of the last ones before he passed on. And he didn't remember me from Chicago, but you know, I thought he would, because you know, being a white boy and all that. But he'd been down the road, and he did a lot of drinking, man.
I'm sure life was a blur for him at that point.
Yeah, being raised in Louisiana, if you ever been to Louisiana, man, it's like going back in time 50 years. You know, it's just a way of life, and the people don't know any different. And I kind of like that.
Yeah.
I might die and go down there and live for a while.
What did you think of the whole 60s blues revival, and do you think anything like that could ever happen again?
Well, I'm really thankful for guitarists like Clapton and Beck and Page and all the great guitarists, Jimmy, that came from there and brought the root and turned it on to the white audience, the Dick Clark audience of America. Because up until the time they came, when a black guy had a hit, like Got My Mojo Working, it was usually a white guy that redid it and got the credit for it.
It was usually Pat Boone.
Or somebody like that, you know. Johnny Rivers, you know. They were just like when I opened up for Big Mama Thornton at the Avalon, she came out and she said, "Man, I'm going to do that song that white boy from Memphis stole from me."
Yeah.
Hell no.
Well, I think that's why some of these guys, like you mentioned Chuck Berry before, why they were a little bit bitter, because they felt like they were getting cut out of the loop. They were getting cut out of the payday, that they would have some other singer would come and have a bigger hit.
One thing about Chuck, man, he always traveled solo. He never had a band. He always picked up somebody.
Yeah.
I saw him play one night with Canned Heat at the Whiskey. You know,
Yeah.
there were a lot of people
I
who
know
backed him up. Steve
He played
Miller.
with Springsteen one night in Jersey. You know, they just wanted, they just wanted to do it. You know, because he had a lot of fans.
Wow.
Yeah.
Bruce, he's the man.
Cool.
I like Bruce.
Hmm.
I like Billy Joel. I think he's on the lines of Paul McCartney, America's Paul McCartney. They sound a lot alike to me in their the way they approach songwriting and the vocal delivery.
Kind of classical influence.
Yeah.
I'd say both of them.
Yeah.
How would you like to be remembered?
I really wouldn't. I'm not going to have a gravestone. My ashes will probably be strewn on Jockey's Ridge. I really don't, I'm looking for glory on the here and beyond.
So you're not.
This was just a learning process for me, and when I get there, I'll graduate.
So you're not working on your legacy. You're working on your next go round.
I'm ready to go. I've had a good life, and if I went right now, I wouldn't have any regrets. I just hope that I'm not a burden to anybody. When I have suffered through in the past, even with my mom and dad and my grandparents, long and tedious deaths, and I would just, just smoke a couple of cigars, drink a couple glasses of wine, and blow my brains out, and I'll be ready. I'm ready to go. No, believe me, one of my guitar players did that.
God. All right, so it's nothing to laugh about. I really hope that you don't go that route. I think as long as you're playing as well as you're playing, I can't.
I'm so blessed, man. I do have arthritis in both my hands, but I suffer every night. But that's just part of the blues.
We all suffer for our art. There's no way around it.
That's so true, man.
But yeah,
art is about suffering.
Yeah.
But art, music is art.
Absolutely.
And art relates to music.
Well, I really want to thank you for coming by, and it's been a pleasure talking with you, and I hope that you'll come back again maybe in a little while, give us an update of whatever you got going on.
I'm still around.
I hope so too. I hope so too.
We'll sit down and have a cigar.
Let's do this again. Let's do this every 6 months, or as long as you're here.
All right, man. God bless you.
God bless you, Mojo. Thank you so much.
God bless you.